Hey everybody, so this is part two. I'm just uploading part one, so this way I can do this on the phone. And we were talking about scientific criticism as opposed to emotional criticism. That was the last thing I was going to talk about. So it's very, very easy for me to be peer reviewed, or my thoughts to be peer reviewed. So I don't necessarily see my thoughts as my own. I see them as, think of an antenna being consciousness, somehow interacting with waves of information and filtering them into the brain, and then the brain sort of chews them up based upon genetics and environment, and then spits them out into incomplete and incoherent thoughts, which are then scientifically criticized by people. That might not make sense, that could make sense, that there probably needs a bit of work, that's why it needs some work. That's easy to handle. What's difficult is when someone says you're a piece of crap scumbag, when in fact that is nowhere near the truth at all. And it's important to accept that it is quite natural that a certain subset of the population are going to do that. And some will do that in general with many people, and it's not personal. And some who do it where it might seem personal, if they know and care about you enough, if you can explain it, they will then apologize. And there are cases where it's taken 6 or 7 years for someone to apologize to me for misunderstanding something I did, actually more than that, 7 or 8 years ago. And they were finally able to realize that actually that wasn't the case. But by then, I actually didn't even care that they cared, which would have been a good way to access it at the beginning. But that's also an extreme position to say, I don't care completely. And you learn to completely extricate that person from your consciousness and from the people that you consider worthy of respect, which is a shame. But at the same time, I don't really want to respect them again. We'll leave it at that. Funnily enough, this is actually why that was the fuel behind what was propelling me to expand the GabSmacked PERISCOPE channel and subsequently YouTube, in order to help fight against potential misunderstandings, or at least have a light that can shine backwards through, let's say, the funhouse mirrors that were inaccurately reflecting some sort of noble intent into some sort of nefarious or mal intent in general across the board. But the problem was that it turned into desperation, where the more misinformation that was out there, whether it was intentional or not, or whatever I believed to be misinformation, that's probably more accurate, needed to be offset. And so there was this pathological need to constantly provide pure or accurate information, or what I believe to be accurate information, to counteract that. And the goal is to realize that you will never have the answer, and you'll be held hostage by this pathological need to constantly want to offset what you believe or consider to be bad information, or potentially bad information. And the conclusion is not to then give up, as I've tried to before, screw this, why? No, because many people are benefiting, and they openly say this. And you enjoy it. So Gabby, me, and anyone in a similar situation, part of the reason you're doing it is that you really enjoy doing it. You enjoy sharing knowledge, you enjoy learning new knowledge, sharing more knowledge, having it shared back to you so that you can almost reflexively realize where your errors are, and then enhance your understandings and refine them as much as possible. And there is no point in going to the other extreme and thinking I may as well not do it at all because it's not achieving the goal that was set out, that I had set out for me, or my younger self had set out for me, which was to eliminate the world of misinformation. That is never going to happen. It is always a mix of the two. And who knows, maybe in some fantastic, and I use fantastic in the fantasy connotation, some fantastic utopian society of the future, engineered by artificial intelligence, we might be able to get there, but it's not going to happen today. And so we do our best and know that it was not our worst. Good Yen Sun. It's the perceived real impact on your life from inaccurate mirroring that can make you feel debilitated, because your sense of self, as the doc was saying to me, is tied up in your reputation. And the solution is not to detach it completely, but to realize that your sense of self was tied into that. And so it can be extremely painful when the fundamental view you have of yourself is attacked, challenged, ruined, distorted, destroyed in any way or in any degree. It can make you feel as though your world is collapsing, that your life is collapsing, when in fact this can then of course generate a huge amount of desperation, and then cause you to, without understanding boundaries, especially if you're on the autistic spectrum, you're going to do anything logically that it would take to show people that you are this great person. As I said previously, someone is desperate to show you that they're not a stalker, and so they'll keep contacting you to let you know that they're not and provide you evidence as to how they're not. As you know, that's the exact irony. That's the quicksand metaphor, where, whether this is true or not, I don't know, but the more you try to get out of it, the more you sink, as has been proposed by certain kids' cartoons in the 80s. So what was happening, of course, was that there was a constant oscillation between being desperate to try and fix the world of inaccurate meanings, representations, mirroring, and then nihilism, which is it's hopeless, it's never going to happen. And this oscillation between total or totalitarianism and nihilism is, of course, on a grand scale, what humans throughout history have been doing. And so the doc says, I guess you are human after all. And Pompous would say, you're a human, GabSmacked. You're a loser. That's what Pompous would do, of course, if he was here. And ultimately, the takeaway from Wednesday Wisdom this week is to try to learn to tolerate distress instead of either dealing with it completely or rejecting what caused it completely. And that can be applied to many things, such as relationships. You might want someone to be close to, but you don't want them too close. That can cause claustrophobia. That we can talk about another time. And that ends our Wednesday Wisdom for this week. And don't forget to take life one smack at a time.
Here we go.